Back to talk about some soap operas for the week. And, I could talk about all the American soap operas really and just talk about how terrible they are right now, but I've decided not to do that. I mean, I already talked about Bold and the Beautiful last week and them going back to the love triangle that literally nobody wants to see or watch. So I decided I'm going to just narrow it down to talking General Hospital, Young and the Restless, and then the British soap opera Hollyoaks today. Most likely just those three. And we're going to start with General Hospital because I don't have as negative shit to say about General Hospital right now. Now, I've gone on plenty of rants about Frank Valentini and the writers and how bad they are at their jobs, and they still are for the most part bad, but I do feel like they are trying to right some wrongs this month. In the Trina storyline, I've already talked about how this has such a weak foundation for the story with Esme and all of her plotting, but the fact that pretty much almost everyone knows it was Esme and are behind Trina, I think works, except for the fact that nobody can seem to find evidence against Esme. I mean, they have the entire town trying to look for evidence. But whatever, I just think that can't be dragged on for too long. But, this is General Hospital. And the one thing that continues to hold this show back is the slow-ass pace of it. But I think what they're getting right is maybe the characters. We're finally seeing Spencer's real motives, that he is falling in love with Trina. We had the good fake out in that episode a few days ago. So it's good to actually get Spencer's real point of view, even if it's from a daydream. I think that has been long overdue in this story to show that Spencer really does have feelings for Trina. I mean, they've shown it here and there, but they've never really explicitly went for it like that, even though it was just a fake out and a daydream. But I'm glad that they finally were able to put that on screen. And they have tried to write Joss and Cam better as well in regards to their friendship with Trina. Cam laying into Spencer was a big one for me. So, as much as they have hurt the teens in these storylines over the past several months now, honestly, they are trying to right some wrongs, and I think they need to. But for me, it is a good thing that they at least, like the writers and Valentini, maybe see some of their problems. That's a good thing, that they see the issues and are maybe at least trying to fix it, even though the writing remains mostly terrible on this show. And then the character of Esme, I don't know how I feel about her anymore. She had potential to be this good villain. And I see the usual dumbass Twitter soap bloggers or whatever, talking about how she is a good villain. But she's not anymore, because as I've stated over the past month or two, they're kind of turning her into the usual GH villain, which is a cartoon. So I don't know. I'm not agreeing anymore that Esme is a good villain because the writing has been so bad. So that is one issue that they are still going to have to fix, is to turn Esme into less of a cartoon villain if you really want me to pretend that she is a good villain. Or at least maybe actually feel like she is a good villain. But yeah, General Hospital over the past week tried to right some wrongs. I think it's been better than it's been the last few months. So there's that. That's about the most I can say positive for any of these American soap operas. Because I'm going to get into The Young and the Restless now, and Hollyoaks in England, because I feel like these two shows show a really good job of like the opposite end of bad soap opera storytelling, if you will, I guess. because both have not been great as of late. Obviously, Young and the Restless way worse than Hollyoaks, but what Young and the Restless struggles at, for whatever reason, is having any storylines. I've talked about that for months now, and even though they have gotten better at least trying to have storylines over the past couple of months, they still don't seem to know how to make these stories interesting or make them exciting. And if you're really going to get into it, I feel like their two main stories that are really their two only stories are basically the same. We've had for months, is Ashlyn really bad or is Ashlyn really love Victoria? And then the other story is Diane really changed? It's basically the same thing. Is Ashlyn good or bad? Is Diane good or bad? So they've started to tell some storylines, but they're basically the same thing with some different circumstances and different families, because the Newmans are pretty unwatchable and the Abbotts are at least somehow remain entertaining despite being kind of decimated over the years. So yeah, we have Young and the Restless, which seems to struggle to find any stories to tell. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Hollyoaks, an English soap opera, who just has a little too many stories going on at once. That, to me, I've said it in the past, these past few months, it just seems like they throw stuff at a wall to see what sticks. That's how many damn storylines Hollyoaks has. And I think both of those things are bad. Because on Hollyoaks, they could have all these stories, but they all are just kind of a mess. And there's just a complete lack of focus on Hollyoaks right now. Since the new production took over, the new producer took over, it's kind of been the case. There is just a general lack of focus. So because these two shows are on opposite ends, I just really wish that Young and the Restless could find more interesting stories to tell, because they could just use far more interesting stories. The cast can cut some weight too, so find an interesting way to cut some of these characters that nobody really cares about anymore off of the show. And then on Hollyoaks, I just need them to find some focus, because putting on a bunch of different storylines at once isn't really interesting either, especially because on Hollyoaks there is just they're doing so many storylines that a lot of them come similar. We have several different people having addiction issues right now. They also just have a ton of new characters, and that is always hard to keep up with when there's so many new characters. We had 2 different dead bodies in the back of cars over the past few months. It's like your stories are getting a little redundant because you're trying to do too much at once. So I just want both shows to find a balance. Like if the Hollyoaks producers and writers and the Young and the Restless producers and writers could get together and have a meeting, maybe they could find some middle ground on how to tell a decent soap opera. Alright, I think that's all I got for now. So, yeah, that's where I'm standing right now with some of these soap operas. The rankings I gotta do rankings again here in a couple weeks. General Hospital, improving on a character level, kinda. The pace is just the killer of that show. It's so slow. I don't know how they expect to keep a young audience, and they haven't kept a young audience because the demo hasn't been great lately. And then, while Young and the Restless has improved, it's still super fucking boring. And then there's Hollyoaks that I really need to find focus.